Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of Powerbombshells with Sam and Mel. We have a lot to cover this week. But first, before we get into all of that, we want to make sure that you are prepared for episode 6, which will be our very first live episode that we're going to do. So that should be fun. It'll be interactive so that you guys can leave. You can talk with us and chat with us throughout the show, and we'll pop them up on the screen and look all fancy. And hopefully, some of you may end up making us laugh. I had that happen to me when I did Brews News. Somebody Garrett put up a quote or put up somebody's comment and I made the mistake of reading it as I was speaking and ended up losing it in the middle of it. So
I love the comments function on this thing. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I have a feeling that will happen next week, but we are actually part of a big Mania Week thing that Fight Game. Yeah, she's gonna throw it up there. Look at all of that. So Fight Game Media is gonna be busy, bringing you all kinds of coverage, and not even just obviously the WrestleMania stuff. That's the big thing next weekend, but there's a lot of other shows going on as well that are not affiliated with WWE. And Mel and I ourselves will be checking out some non-Mania things. There's a lot of things going on with GCW's The Collective, and so we'll be watching a lot of that. So we're going to be watching a lot of wrestling next week. And so that's basically what our Sunday show will be covering is, basically what we watched and what we think you should go check out. And talking about that, maybe we'll give our review of WrestleMania Night 1. Who knows? It's live, so
it's like the only thing that I already get with my cable subscription. It's the only thing that I'm like, what am I going to buy? What am I going to do? Because I know you get the full package, but I know I'm not going to get to all of it.
Right.
And that's a little out of my price range, but
yeah.
A couple of $15, $20.
Yeah.
Although I guess it does add up, but I think I know which ones.
Yeah,
narrowed down to which ones I really want to see. But the good news is that if I'm not talking about it and you're not talking about it, somebody on Fight Game Media is going to be talking about it.
Yes.
And we're also, that was good there.
Yeah, very good.
We'll practice there. We'll marketing background there.
And outside of our YouTube show, we're going to be doing a Fight Game Media Spaces on Friday. At 6 p.m. Eastern time. Yes, Friday is stacked with stuff. There is so much. There's so much stuff. There's gonna be. I mean, I'm not even talking about the Fight Game Media.
No. It's like literally okay. Everybody, we're gonna start a wrestling. We're gonna start 10 wrestling shows at 6. And 10 wrestling shows at 8.
Yeah, pretty much.
So that they're all wrapping up at 10 and 11. Just in time for you to not watch Rampage. I'm really sorry, Rampage.
I will be watching it because I cover it for another website. So I'll be watching. So I'm hoping ROH ends right on time. And it's funny because apparently I saw somebody on Twitter say Tony Khan, I don't know where this was. I'm assuming Busted Open since he practically lives on that show. But he said to be
there a lot.
Yeah, so he was like, make sure to watch till the very end of Ring of Honor. So I guess he don't cut out and go to Rampage apparently. I was like, hopefully he's not gonna overrun his own show.
Isn't that what they tell all the Star Wars nerds when they have to tune in every 4 years for the Super Bowl or for Monday Night Football? Yeah. Come on, watch it again. Well, no kidding. That's the oldest marketing ploy in the book.
Right. So I don't know. Tony, and I was like, well, I mean, I have to cut over to Rampage regardless of what you're doing. So I have to, and I was like, so I'll be furiously covering that. So if you miss Rampage, then if you follow me on my personal page, I'll have a recap for you for the other site that I write for. But so I was like, this would be, and I was like, I don't even know. I was like, how do you stack that Rampage to follow Ring of Honor? And also when Rampage is on, Impact will be on, and Impact has some really good matches happening. And I want to watch Impact, so I will not be able to watch it live.
And then the New Japan show is on that night.
Yes, at 6:00 when we're doing the Twitter Spaces.
Right, that one I'm gonna have to watch back, obviously.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. Hopefully, I'll have time to watch it that weekend. If not, I'll just watch it whenever it's on World, and we'll talk about it. Believe me, we'll talk about it at some point. So whenever we watch it, it might be a episode 7 conversation with all this.
Well, and there'll be a strong taping on that we'll end up talking about future because I think the one that was on last night from this taping was the last in the Rivals tour.
Yeah, and so I need to watch that one. I didn't get to watch it because I was at a live wrestling show last night, which I'll get into in a minute. But so I haven't watched Strong. I have somehow, we were just talking about this before we started recording. I somehow have missed everything with the finals, the semifinals, the finals. I don't know anything. Twitter usually spoils everything for me, especially with New Japan because of the time difference. And I don't know if people are just not watching it, and so they're just not talking about it as much, or I know not being able to have gifts definitely hurts because that's how I used to see things. And so somehow which I guess is a good thing that I've somehow been able to not be spoiled. It's nice.
Yeah, I'm shocked. I only right towards the end, I was watching the match and running around doing things with the dog, and then picked up my Twitter like a ding dong and went,
I've done that.
It's like halfway through the match. Shut up. And I had a feeling anyway, and it was just because of where we were and what went on with the previous matches and everything else. And I'll say this is like, definitely check it out, because this is really starting to feel like New Japan.
That's feeling news.
This last series, the semis, like the finals, those shows, they're really starting to feel like New Japan shows again.
That's
like,
great.
Almost as if like, because you can hear even the crowd is like oohing and ahhing under there. Like Chris Charlton even points out that you can hear the oohs and ahs, and I'm like,
it's hard not to have that when you're watching live. Yeah, it's really hard. And I ended up watching the other night. I was waiting for Impact to come back on, and I happened to catch Okada versus Naito from February 20th, I think, which I had already seen, but I ended up going back and watching it, and you could hear the fans were clapping to Okada, like they were getting it. And I was like, they're trying so hard to like let you know who they're behind. And I was like, and poor Naito, I mean, I guess there were some clapping for there, but you could definitely tell it was like a Okada, like they were with the syllables and things like that. So
it's close. It's very close, but it's and I mean, it's hard. It really is, because the matches are getting so good.
Yeah.
And I'm not that they weren't good, but it's hard to exist in the space we've been existing in the last few years.
It is, especially when we talked about before.
Feel it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We were talking about how last week about how things are starting to open up again. So it's just like everything's on the verge. Like you can feel it's like about to combust over.
I mean, the good news is like Best of Super Juniors is at the same time it's supposed to be out this year. It's in May. It's right. I mean, I know that like I was like, oh crap, the Owen is going on.
That's what I was like, literally just about the Owen 2 tournaments.
That's a lot of tournaments, but it's okay.
But I love tournaments. So
you know what? I never thought that I would enjoy tournaments as much. I mean, I'm a soccer player, so tournament style is like very familiar to me.
Sure.
So of course I should have known that I would enjoy it in wrestling, but until that first G1, first one where you go, that it ends and you have that like day after Christmas feeling where you're like, there's no more wrestling. It's like, dude, it's been 6 weeks. Relax.
Yeah.
Yeah, one more match.
Yeah, Japanese, and I've noticed that with like the New Japan tournaments are a completely different feeling like than the American style ones, and it's just it's the payoff, and there's and the tournaments, and I think, and that's also obviously their tournaments tend to end faster, and then you get when you're watching the New Japan ones, you get super invested in them, and they're just everybody brings it up like 10 notches, and so the matches are even better than they normally would be, and then you just get really invested in them. And so I'm really glad that they're putting BOSJ back when it's supposed to be, and the G1 will be when it's supposed to be. So I'm really looking forward to those, and I'm sure the Owen's going to be really great too, and I'm looking forward to that, especially because we're getting a men's and a women's Owen Cup. So I think that's really cool.
I'm looking forward to that because it'd be nice to have a North American tournament that, I mean, I don't expect it to be as good as the G1 on year one.
No, I don't think
it would be nice to see the possibility of having something in the same realm of possibility.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that they can lay it out, like, not just like, those type of tournaments. I think that they know what the fans like. The fans obviously are really vocal about those. And so I think maybe they can kind of use that to help with, how they book their own tournament.
Definitely. I am very excited. I can't wait to hear your feedback on all of those things, because I am caught up and I watched the 10-man from last night, and it's okay. It's weird. I can't believe I'm more caught up than most everyone I know these days. That's such a weird place to be.
I don't know when we're going to be able to talk about it, because next week will be all WrestleMania stuff.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll have plenty.
We'll talk about it at some point, I'm sure. Especially if you follow me on my personal Twitter, I tend to live tweet what I'm watching anyway, or at least tweet thoughts of stuff. So I'm sure that if you want like in real time reactions, it'll be on there at some point. But yes, I'm really looking forward to getting caught up on that and getting caught up on Strong, because Strong has been, like we said, stop sleeping on them.
Yep. I made sure and got myself a New Japan Strong appreciation tweet last night, because it never fails. I've been really glad, and I don't even, it's, maybe we'll do highlights from the last few because of everything that's going on when we get caught back up and week to week. But either way, it's like, it's so worth it.
It is. Yeah, I was actually. I was talking to a friend last night while we were at our independent show, and I was like, I'm so glad that I got back into Strong. I was like, I'm only 4 episodes in, but I was like, there's so much good stuff, and I was like, and I was talking about Ren Narita and Buddy Matthews, and he was like, well, it sounds like a good match, and I was like, no, it's not. He was like, well, it's so understandable, and I was like, no, like it was way better than it had any right being. Like,
right.
Like it was like, we knew seeing the names, okay, this is going to be solid, and it completely exceeded any expectations that I had, and so I was like, please. I was like, if you're not going to get caught back up on Strong, or you're going to start from like here out, then go. I was like, go watch that one. I was like, I mean, Swerve versus Jay White from the week before is very good, and it's worth your time. But I was like, Ren Narita, and I was like, Chris Bay versus Blake Christian was an excellent match, very good match. But I was like, Ren Narita and Buddy Matthews just blew both of those out of the water, and it's a completely different style, which is the thing, which is great with New Japan. And, we get so many different styles that you wouldn't necessarily think, would work together, but they do somehow. And I think it says a lot about the talent that New Japan is bringing in, and what they're cultivating as well with with the La Dojo and things like that.
Yeah, I'm so excited when and again, it's like that investment thing that we were just talking about with the like the G1 tournament. It's like, I've been able to watch some of these guys. It's like somebody brought up Shota Umino the other day, and I know that a couple of my friends in the Euro over there have gotten to see him because he was on his expedition on excursion. What am I talking about? In the European, like the UK and whatever. So they've gotten to actually see him, and I'm like, I'm so jealous.
I need John Moxley to go rescue his son. And let us.
One of these days, that moment is gonna happen.
Somebody the other day, they were talking about, it might have been in a Fight Game Media, people that were talking about how they needed John Moxley needed to go get him and put him with him and Danielson, and I was like, I need that to happen too. Go rescue your son.
Your wrestling son needs you.
He needs it. Now William Regal's involved. He needs it. Bring him over here.
See, I love that. I love that we can sit here though, and like, that's real. Like, we could. There's a real. It's not like, oh, wouldn't it be great? It's like, that could really happen.
Yeah, which is great, especially with things opening up now. And I don't know if they can change the excursion rules, because I think, what is it? They generally spend like 2 years in a. Is it 2 years that they spend on excursion,
I think it varies a little. I mean, I can't. Gosh, I need to finish reading Lion's Pride. I started it and only got a little ways in.
Right.
And, I mean, nothing against Chris Shelton. I love his writing, but that's like 700 pages. So I can only do it in little,
He has a lot to say. There's a lot of information to cover.
It's fascinating stuff too. I mean, I've started Eggshells also, but it's like, again, it's like, I know I will finish them, but I have to take them in chunks. It's like,
well, it's a lot to read.
It's a lot to Observer every week, and it's like, I love reading.
It's a lot.
I gotta mix it up and read about something else.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to read about bugs and gardening or something. Something else.
I'm reading. That's one of the things I have. Like, I was like, I've got wrestling things that I'm reading, but I also have a book on herbalism that I'm trying to read. And I was like, it's interesting, but it's not. I mean, after you go from wrestling stuff, and then you're like, hold, I gotta change my my mindset, what I'm thinking about, and things like that. So I definitely. But I was like, sometimes my brain needs a break from wrestling, and we always joke, because my dog will be like, sometimes she'll look at the TV and like, are you watching wrestling again? Don't you watch anything else? But it's funny, because she, like, sometimes the big one, she was watching, it was a couple of years ago, we were watching New Japan, and Tana came out, and he had some big thing on. He just came out, and Miley was just mesmerized by him, and she kind of growled a little, because I think it had I can't remember if I feel like it had feathers, probably. She was like,
when he has the big, like, puffy,
and she was watching the TV like, what is happening? Is this a bird? is this a man or a bird, or what is happening? And I was like, don't you bark at Tana.
That's my big spoiler for, we talked about this off air, but I'm bringing this back on, is that God showed up like in one of those final those semis and finals there.
Yeah.
We were talking about, are they face? Are they not face? Well,
right.
They came out with Tanahashi.
So I guess that answers the question.
Tanahashi's music.
Okay.
And we all know that he's the face of the universe.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, it's going to be...
You can't stand with that guy and have his music playing, have his hair aura envelop you.
Yeah, exactly.
So they are now face. I mean,
that you have to be, and then it's going to be quite an adjustment to get used to seeing. I mean, I think it'll be fun and it'll be interesting. It's something different, a different way to look at. No. And
or maybe some of them, maybe they'll split, and some of them will be face, and some of them will be.
Don't turn on Tana though. I don't want that.
No one's.
Don't turn on Tana. Just leave.
If they want to turn on Tana, they can tangle with his hair and then actually tangle with him. I think it's cute. Like, some of the wrestlers like tell stories about how they like ask him for pointers, and he will totally help. And I'm just like, of course he will. He's the nicest, he's the ace. Come on.
Exactly.
It's just he just the best. I love him. I love his Instagram. Is just him, his hair, and his dog. And the pastries and stuff that he eats.
Yeah. And then he's like, look at my muscle. He's like, I was like, look at my arm.
My how good I look. And we're like, we know. And
he's like, and look at what I can eat. And here's my cute dog who just got a haircut.
Meanwhile, Minoru Suzuki's like, cool socks. What?
Yeah, his is like coffee and his socks.
Coffee and socks. I love following. I mean,
I do too.
Some wrestlers know how to do social media, and I think the Japanese wrestlers have got it down.
Yeah, and they're just like, here's my content, like it or not. They're like, we don't care. I want to tweet about my socks today. And then every once in a while, Suzuki's like, here's my store that you can come shop in.
Which you know that you would go shopping if you lived in your
area. Definitely. So he's like, every once in a while, he's like, oh yeah, I have this store. But here you go. But usually it's my socks, my sock of the day.
I'm very into that. So
me too.
I'm like, nice.
This is the content I'm here for.
Yeah, totally. That's what Instagram.
Yeah, and it's like some of my favorite. Like I love Kojima's tweets. Like they are the best.
Oh my god, he's the
bread.
Best about bread. Although I think he just switched from bread to something else this week.
He tweeted about chocolate, and I was like, and I was like, me too, Kojima. And he was talking about bread and chocolate, and I was like, we could be best friends.
Yeah, those are two solid food groups.
yes. I was like, they know how to make the fans happy. Just talk to them about bread, socks,
carbs, and sugar.
Dog.
What else you need? I mean, like,
not much.
It's like a staple: wrestling, carbs, and sugar.
Right.
Some, like, I don't know. There's a couple other, maybe an adult beverage or something in there. Yeah. You're all ready to go.
Yes.
So anyway, I want to hear about your wrestling tournament.
Okay, so the tournament so PWX is a local promotion here in Charlotte that I've been going to for 10 years. I started with just me and my sister, and it was back when they were like running like rec centers. Like Cedric Alexander was like there in his early days, so I used to pay like $5 to see him wrestle at a rec center. His family used to go, and they used to get super into it, and like it was really fun. And so we saw, and like Rhett Titus was champion at one point, and Adam Cole used to come through there. So there's a ton, and like Adam Page, that's where he started out at. He used to come out to Song of the South by Alabama. He used to have a John. And he'd come out with his John Deere hat, and he had and he wouldn't have a shirt on, and it was baby Adam Page, and it was so funny because he was he was always a solid wrestler. And I remember one day I was on Twitter, and it was like Adam Page joined the Bullet Club, and I was like, what? It was like Adam Page, like that Adam Page, the same one. They're different Adam Page. And then I saw
he didn't go by Hangman back then. He went by Adam Page.
Yeah, and so that's why I was like, wait. And so I told my sister, I was like, look, I was like, baby Hangman, baby Adam Page that we used to watch all the time is in the biggest faction in the world now. So awesome. It's crazy. So so we've been going for a long time. We've seen a lot of people come through there. So X16 is a really big tournament. It's generally a January thing. This year they took a few months off to kind of rebrand and kind of go back to their old ways back in like the mid 2015, like I would say like 2015 to 17 was like their sweet spot. That's when they were really hot. They were bringing in like the Young Bucks and stuff like that. Like Sammy Callahan was there for like 6 months doing shows. And so there was a lot of really cool stuff happening. And then they kind of got away from that. And I guess now they're trying to bring it back around. So it was funny. It was supposed to be a two-stage tournament, which is what they've done in the past. It was going to start at 2:00, and then they were going to have they would do the tournament, there would be a break, and then they would start the stage 2 at 7:00. Well, apparently Monday morning they found out that the venue they were going to use was a venue they've never used before. Something happened and they could not use the venue. And this was the tournament, and they were bringing in all kinds of talent for this, and they were like scrambling, like they were like, what do? We don't want to cancel. We've already not had a show since December. So they ran it at the National Guard in Gastonia, which they've run shows there a lot. I don't know how they got it last minute. Apparently there was a birthday party yesterday afternoon. They had 2 hours to set up everything.
Wow.
Yeah. And so Ethan Case, which is one of the wrestlers, he also has a wrestling school. So he had a lot of his kids there to help, and the students they just worked their asses off to get it set up yesterday. And you would have never known that they got it set up in 2 hours. So it was really cool. So I was there with my friends that we go with. Nikki was not with me because she was having some back issues. So I was telling her, before we came on, this was the first show in 10 years that I have gone without my sister. So it was really, really weird. Like, we have a group chat with, the friends of ours that we go with. And so, we were keeping her updated throughout the night just so that she kind of could feel included. And it's going to air they just started airing their shows on IWTV, like I want to say October or November. And so sometimes they do live shows, but I guess because of everything that was going on yesterday, they were just like,
we can't. It's too much production.
Yeah, so
there's a lot to work through.
I'm sure it'll air at some point within the next week. So really good match. They brought in some fantastic talent. So Yuda Wheeler has been wrestling in PWX on and off for the last year or so.
Cool.
And so so they had him in the tournament. They brought in ACH, who was back. He came back in December. Like, he's wrestled on and off in PWX, and then they brought him in December, and so they brought him back for this, which was great to see. I've always loved to see ACH. They brought in Effie, who was one of my favorites. I love
Effie.
To see
Effie at GCW on the end.
So that's a completely different breed of Effie than what's anywhere else. So they brought in Lindsay Dorado, and Lindsay prior to signing with WWE, he would wrestle sometimes in PWX. He used to wrestle with Serpentico, so it was nice to see him back. So that was probably the first time he's been in PWX in probably at least 5 years. And they brought in David Ali, who I had heard his name. And then like right after he was announced, he ended up being on an episode of Dark. And so I got to see a little bit of him, but obviously it's Dark, so they don't, they don't always get a lot of time. So I got to see him last night. So that was cool to see. So it was nice to see like all the talent that they brought in. Plus they had like the homegrown talent. I don't know if some of our viewers, if they watch Deadlock Pro, which is a new promotion in North Carolina, it started with the Deadlock Pro guys have a podcast, and then they started a wrestling promotion.
I'm sure John LaRocca knows who they are.
Yeah. So I started, so they recorded 4 episodes back in December, and they all air on YouTube. They're like hour shows. They're really quick the matches, it's kind of like Strong, where the action's just nonstop, and the matches are really good. So they're actually wrote about them for Fight Game Media, just because they were starting to pick up some steam. So I can probably find the link and post that to you guys. But so they just came back last week, was when their new show, or 2 weeks ago, I think it was last week. They started with the next 4, and then they're going to have this will be their second pay-per-view, and it's in Raleigh. If I wasn't having car issues, I would definitely go, because it's really fun. They bring in like Luther's involved. They have him, nice. Kid Bandit has been there, which Kid Bandit is a Nightmare Factory graduate. He's not been wrestling very long, and I believe their pronouns are they them. So I apologize for that, but they're very good, very like they almost like a prodigy, just how quickly they've picked up wrestling. So Kid Bandit's a lot of fun. Bojack is their champion. Bojack has wrestled in Charlotte. He's been wrestling for PWX for a while, like on and off. They would bring him in for their Pure brand, which is kind of like they feature more up and coming talent. And so Bojack he's phenomenal. And he wrestled last night, and he was originally supposed to wrestle JD Drake, but JD Drake had prior commitments with another promotion, and so he had to go do that. So I was hoping we were going to get Big Meaty Man slapping meat, but we'll have to
damn it.
But we did get him against John Davis, and John Davis is the current PWX champion. So with X16, the point is, so generally the champion does not compete in the tournament because the winner gets this really fancy trophy that looks like the Tri-Wizard trophy. This is what it looks like. I'll have to tweet a picture.
Yes, you do, because I need to see
exactly what it looks like.
I wish I had a picture to put up here.
Yeah, it looks like the Tri-Wizard. That's what it reminds me of.
Nice.
And so generally the person who wins it, they get a title shot within the year.
Okay,
and so
sense.
Generally that's how it goes. So we all knew who was going to win the tournament. They've kind of been building to it. And then so John Davis was not supposed to be in the tournament, and then JD Drake ended up having to go do his thing where he had prior commitments already. So John Davis was like, I will be in the tournament, and every match that if I make it to each round, every time I'm in it, my title will be on the line. So the first round that he was in, he faced Bojack. And so that crowd went nuts for Bojack. And John Davis was really good. That match ended up being like, I knew it was going to be good. And it just, we thought a couple times they were going to we were worried that the ring wasn't reinforced well enough because they were like up on the turnbuckles and they were doing big spots and they did it 3 times. Luckily, everything was fine, but it was a very, very good match. I think had Bojack won that title, that the roof would have blown off the place. That was just, and people were super into it. People were on their feet afterwards. John Davis did retain, which I guess I'm kind of glad, because if Bojack won the title and then lost it in the next round, I would have been not happy with that. I don't think anybody would have been happy. And then I think, so the match it starts out with 16 competitors. Mason Miles, who wrestles here a lot, he's also in Deadlock Pro. He faced Yuda. Yuda went on to the second round. The big upset was Savannah Evans, who a lot of you may know as Tasha Steele's enforcer on Impact Wrestling. She defeated Effie, which was, everybody thought Effie was gonna, be around for a few matches, but it was a really good match, and but Effie did not last long, and that was definitely a surprise. But it ended up being good for Savannah later on, which I'll get to. But so ACH had a match with Drew Adler. That was a really good one. Lindsay looked fantastic. I'm really glad to see him back on the indies. Lucky Ali, who I've talked about a few times on here, he's the ITV champion in PWX. He had some really good matches. And so Chip Day is the person we all thought was going to win. He's been in PWX for a while. He left for a little bit and then he came back recently. So we kind of figured, that's where it was going. So Chip easily got through. He wrestled Jordan Oliver, who was in GCW. So Jordan Oliver did not advance, and he was one of the, but his Jordan Oliver was really good. I was like, there's no ladders. I was like, what is he going to do a cutter off of? Because it's not a Jordan Oliver match without a cutter, but he did get a little one off the second rope. So I was
goodness.
I'll take it.
Something, I guess.
I'll take it. So that was a really solid match. Then round 2, we got to, the very first match was Lindsay Dorado versus Chip Day. I think Lindsay and Chip probably crossed paths in PWX prior, if I remember correctly. And so that was really cool. Then we got Lucky Ali versus Yuda Wheeler, which was a very good match. Lucky Ali got the win, and so Yuda was knocked out in the second round. The best match in this round and the best match of the night was Anthony Henry versus ACH. That was an absolute banger of a match. It was just, and it was funny because I wanted that match when I saw they both advanced, because God, probably at least a year or so ago, I don't remember how we were just talking to Anthony during his match. I think the crowd was interacting. Somehow it came up asking what Anthony's middle name was. And he was like, it's Paul. So he's APH. So we were chanting go APH during that match. So when I realized they were both in the next tournament, I texted my sister and I was like, man, I hope we get it. And then so Anthony comes out, and then and then ACH, who was using, it was funny, ACH used PD Pablo is what he came out to last night, I guess, because he was in North Carolina. He decided to come out, which is funny because in December he came out to a song by From Lupe Fiasco. And I think he'd been using that on the indies. And so when he first came out, I was like, who was using PD Pablo? And then ACH's little graphic pops up. And we were like, oh, okay. So I guess because he was there last night, he decided to use it. So that was fun. But yeah, so as soon as I heard the music, I was like, oh my God, we're getting it. And so I took a picture of them in the ring and sent it to my sister. And I was like, look, we're getting it. And I was like, I don't think anybody but our group probably even remembers the APH chants. It's like they probably don't even remember that happening. But the match was incredible. ACH looked really great. Even in the first round of the match, he just looked like he was having a lot of fun. He looked like he was happy to be there. So it was really good to see ACH happy and looking, like he had found his passion for wrestling again. So it was really nice to see. So Anthony Henry did end up winning that match. And so ACH did not advance. And then the main event ended up being Savannah versus John Davis. And so Savannah, which is the nice thing, there's not a whole lot of women wrestlers in PWX, which is something they've got to work on. They bring in women sometimes, but that's one of my criticisms with them. But Savannah can hold her own with anybody. And so John Davis told her, he was a little apprehensive about, wrestling her. And he was like, well, you know what I do, right? Well, she slapped him in the face. Okay. and then he just chopped the crap out of her, and she would get right back up. But it was definitely, it was a vicious match, and it didn't last long. I told my sister it was the length of a dark women's match. It was like 5 minutes long, but it was still a good one. Savannah, she looked good. So then we got to round 3, which was the semifinals, and it was Chip Day versus Lucky Ali. Lucky Ali was super over with that match. The Lucky chants were insane in that match. And so I think had he advanced, people would have been happy. Chip Day did end up winning. Then we had Anthony Henry. And Anthony Henry won the X16 tournament like 3 years ago. And so I have a picture with him and the Tri-Wizard.
Oh, nice.
The Tri-Wizard Cup. Somewhere I have a picture of that. Of them together. So Anthony Henry wrestled John Davis, so that was a title match as well. Anthony Henry was previously, after he won the X16, he ended up cashing in at some point, and he was champion for a year. Oh, nice. So that was kind of nice to see Anthony kind of get that, get that far into the finals. And then so Davis did win, and he retained his title. So before they got, I guess to kind of give them a breather, we got a tag team match. Which was the Heat Seekers, who were just in the Crockett Cup last weekend. Oh, nice. So they've come back. They were PWX champions for a little bit. And then they wrestled who used to be besties in the world, who are the current PWX champions. Somehow all of us missed it that they changed their names. So it pops up on the screen, and it's like this radio.
Like,
and I was
who?
like, yeah. Well, it popped up, and I was like, what is this radio? My friend was like, oh, well, maybe it's going to like tune to Savage Garden or something. Nope. It was like, I don't even know what the song was. It was definitely not Savage Garden. And we were like, no, we have to dance. Like, we have to sing and do the movements with them. What is happening? Well, then it pops up Grindhouse, and we were like, what? And then a picture of Matt Fitchett came up, and I was like, okay, well, it is them. We just don't know who Grindhouse is. So it was interesting. And so we were like, are they heels now? But the Heat Seekers are healed, but they basically have like a little bit more edge, but it's definitely still the same besties in the world as far as their moveset and things like that. They're just a little bit edgier. They did retain their titles. So I guess next month we'll just have to get used to not hearing Savage Garden.
Change is hard. It's okay.
It is hard. Especially, and then somebody was like, oh yeah, they tweeted it like a month ago. And I was like, I don't know how I missed it, because I follow both of them and the Besties in the World Twitter account, which no longer exists now. And a friend of the guys in our group is like a really big Besties fan, and he missed it. And he was like, because he was very confused. He was like, who is this?
What's happening?
He was like, besties are still the champions, right? so now we got to get used to calling them Grindhouse. So then the main event ended up being Chip Day versus John Davis. And Chip was injured in the previous match. He kind of landed awkwardly and it was limping off afterwards. So he comes out to the ring and his girlfriend came out, or his fiance rather, she came out, and Ethan Case, who had been earlier in the show, has been with Chip for a really long time. He comes out and they're trying to convince him not to wrestle. John Davis was like, we can wrestle at another time. You're clearly hurt. And Chip was like, no, I got to do this. So he was chopping John to, make him mad. And John chopped him and he immediately falls down. And he's like, you're clearly not ready. Like the bell hadn't rang at this point and they're still trying to talk him out of, not competing or whatever. And then he stood up. He's like, you can't even stand on that leg. He was like, try to kick me. And he was like, you can't. And so John kicked him in the leg. He falls down. So eventually they decide to start the match. We all know where it's going. And then Ethan Case, who had been on commentary, suddenly gets in the ring and he turns heel. Which none of us were expecting. Ethan has not, since he's been a solo wrestler, he's never been a heel wrestler. He's like the baby face. He's like, he calling himself Mr. PWX for a while. Like he used to be in a tag team years ago and he was a heel then, but has not been a heel since then. And earlier in the night, he had claimed that he had wrestled his last match because it had taken a toll on him and he had signed a contract to be a producer with PWX, which may still be true. I don't know. But yeah, so the heel turn was definitely unexpected. He held John Davis and then Chip was not hurt. He could use his leg. He kicked John Davis. And so he not only won the title, but he won the X16 Cup as well. So I don't know how that's going to work as far as a number one contender, but I'm assuming because John because of the weight he lost, he'll probably get the next title shot. So like I said, my friends and I are not Chip Day fans.
Yeah, you were saying that.
We're already not like my sister and I don't. We have some friends who just absolutely cannot stand him. They just do not like his wrestling style. They just don't like anything about him. My sister and I are not that bad about him. We don't care for him. But we all knew, they've been building up to this for a while. Would hope that I would have rather them have just done it straight and just gotten to the point and got it over it with. Yeah, we didn't need all that. I am intrigued by somebody who's been a babyface for years. I'm very intrigued by that, but I'm not thrilled with the alignment. That means that he's going to be involved with him now. And I was just like, I'm not here for that. And I was not thrilled at all last night with the ending. I was very irritated with the ending. I was like, I don't even know if I want to talk about it on the show tomorrow.
Well, you were committed, so you had to.
Yeah, so I did talk about it, but yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where things go. I did talk to Effie for a couple of minutes after the show last night. I was like, I know that you're super busy with GCW. My sister was bummed that she was going to miss you because you haven't been here in a while. And he was like, no, we reconnected. I'm planning to be back. I don't know how often we'll get Effie, but anytime we can see Effie, it's a good time. So I'm glad he's coming back. And then we did talk to Yuda briefly. My friend Kiefer wanted to talk to, he's like, I want to ask him about the William Regal thing, the chop from William Regal. Yeah. And so we walked over and we talked to him for a minute and he was like, well, what was that like? He said, it hurt really bad. He was like, he's like, I'm not even joking. He was like, it hurt.
Believe it.
and we were like, that's the answer we expected, but it's great just to get the confirmation. He was like, yeah, it hurt. And so we told him it was good to see him and we enjoyed his matches. And he said that he should be back soon. He thinks he's scheduled again for some more shows. So that's always nice to see Yuda back, and so we're glad to see him there, and hopefully I really hope we get to see ACH more often. So when this goes on IWTV, even though I spoiled the ending for you, if you go watch it, definitely make sure that you check out Anthony Henry versus ACH because that match was incredible. Like I might have to put it. I have a list of matches of the year so that later on at the end of the year I can go back and talk, pick one, which is always hard. But I was like, I think I might have to put that on there, which is interesting because Anthony Henry ended up with 2 matches last year on my match of the year list, and they were both PWX matches. He had one right before he left for WWE for the whole 6 months he was there. He wrestled JD Drake, who was his workhorseman partner. They had a very, very good match. It was extremely emotional. JD Drake had some, he talked about some things that he had been dealing with, and he cried, I cried, Anthony Henry cried. Anthony Henry's wife cry. It was very emotional.
But sometimes that's good. Sometimes you need that. I think that getting with your wrestling friends and having those moments, since we haven't gotten to have a lot of them over the last few years, I think that stuff's, it's, especially now, I think it's more important than ever when we're having those moments.
And then we got to, and there's both of them had been guys that we have watched for 6 or 7 years. So, we'd been following their story, and they had been, and then they got thrown together as a tag team by Evolve. Evolve was the one who decided to put the Workhorsemen together. And not only did they make them a tag team, they put the titles on them in their very first match together.
Right.
So, and they, and JD Drake has been vocal about how they hated each other, like literally could not stand each other. And then they were made to be tag team partners. And he said they kind of were just like, they kind of got to know each other and were like, okay. And then now they're like, they're best friends, and they give Amber, which is Anthony's wife, they give her a hard time, and her and JD Drake have gotten close too. And so it's so funny how that works out, how Evolve, put these two guys together that absolutely just could not stand each other, and now they're best friends.
They're pals.
Now they're best friends, and they got to wrestle Danielson and Moxley with Regal in their corner on live TV. So it's a nice, lovely little story.
See, it's worth it. The changes that lead to new, fun, exciting things.
Definitely. So I guess we will
now. Let's
transition out of indie wrestling, and I guess we'll head over to some stuff that happened on AEW this week that we were not thrilled with.
Let's talk about some Thunder Rosa. I think we're gonna. We don't have to go crazy. I really enjoyed the, because all the Dynamite guys, the Dynamite show guys have this on lockdown.
Yeah.
But I love the Dax and CM Punk match. I thought it was great. I actually was surprised that the Tornado tag match was actually as exciting as
that. Was insane.
I was shocked at how much I found myself enjoying it. And
because I just
this has a real original Stadium Stampede vibe to it.
Right. I remember I tweeted, I was like, I need them to, I wish this was split screen so I could watch, Matt Hardy's like fending off Private Party, and then his brother's out doing his crazy thing, and they were like cutting back and forth, and I was like, I just wish they had just the split screen and let me watch both of them at the same time. Because I was surprised at how much I enjoyed. Like, I thought it would be, I was like, oh, this will be an all right match, but it ended up being way better. And like you said, it definitely had Stadium Stampede vibes for sure.
For me, it was big time that, and I was like, all right, great. And I was so excited because Thunder Rosa is coming out. She's going to have her first address, and she's still in Texas. She's still in her adopted home area. And then they pooped all over the champion. Sam, what the hell happened? Literally all I wrote was WTF.
Yeah, I
just sat there. I was like, what just happened?
Well, and it was interesting because the day after, I think it was either the day after she won or maybe it was later that night, Nyla tweeted and she was like, congratulations on winning, on making history. Because I believe that she's the first Latina AEW women's champion. And then she was like, but I'm coming for you, which obviously Nyla's been, she was the second women's champion. She wants obvious. Yeah. So sure. Yeah. And so I was like, well, that's expected. I didn't expect what they did the next night. And, and even so Nyla even on Rampage, like, she's like, well, of course I'm going to be disrespectful. Sure. I get that. But then I think what really turned me off from the entire segment was the things that Vicky said. She said some very racist things. And I was really mad about that. I was just like, it was inappropriate for multiple reasons, obviously. And so I was like, and so then they just having Nyla come attack her, which I was irritated about, but it was the lead up to get to Nyla out there. Like when and I think a lot of people have talked about it. Nyla is a monster. She doesn't need, I understand in the beginning why they put her with Vicky, but at this point, I don't think there's no need for Vicky and Nyla to be together. Nyla we've heard Nyla on the mic. She can cut a promo. She knows how to get her point across. She knows what she needs to do. I think the Vicious Vixens has definitely outworn its welcome. And then just to have, the racist comments on top of it. And they were they were just very horrible things that she said. And to say it in Texas, first of all, to say it in Texas and all, just in general, but then you say it in Texas, which is her adopted home state. The fans are definitely behind her. Like there's getting heat, and then there's just being lazy, and then just
low hanging fruit. I mean, it's cheap. This is like the less than cheap. I think it's tone deaf heat.
Yes,
is what I would say more than that. Because even when I was like, really? I mean, and a couple of people were like, "Oh, Rosa was in on the thing," and I'm like,
"I don't care if she was in on it."
I don't think that makes it okay. I mean, it's I can't really tell. I can't speak to it. I'm a little white girl sitting here. This is let me not sit here and explain things to people.
Sure.
At the same time, it felt a little like 97 Attitude Era.
Yeah,
it's and 2022 and almost a half. It's
right, and we've already
it felt lazy.
Yeah, and last week, it was lazy, and we talked. I mean, we talked about the Dan Lambert stuff last week, and this is basically the same thing, but it's coming from Vicky, and it's coming from it's and I know some people are like, oh, well, she's Latina too. Well, that doesn't make it okay. And I know, and I do I appreciate that AEW gives them the freedom to say what they want in their promos. Like generally it comes off really well. There's hits and misses, but generally it's okay. And I don't, apparently they need to go back and put in some guidelines and don't be racist, don't be sexist, don't.
Well, you want the things that, if you want to play the equality card, is that has to work both ways too. Yeah. And that includes, ladies shouldn't be saying that stuff and dudes shouldn't be saying that stuff, and that shouldn't, again, it's yes, I want you to have your creativity, and I understand.
But that's not creative.
It felt really lazy to me. It didn't even feel like cheap heat. It felt like let's pick the rotting fruit. It wasn't even low hanging fruit. It was like picking the rotting fruit. Pardon me.
It was. And then so it terrible, and then so it was that on its own was terrible. But then it's on your brand new champion that has had the title for literally.
She didn't even get to say anything.
No, and see that made it even worse because I was like,
sorry about the
so it's just
bark.
It's okay. So. I'm sure Miley at some point is going to end up barking during one of these.
They're not as cute as Lance Storm's dogs or anything.
No.
If Toby's cats and Lance's dog can make a cameo, mine can make noises.
There we go.
Kiki.
So the whole thing was terrible, and I think Nyla needs to move away from Vicky. There's no use. I think Nyla can get over on her own. And the whole point of bringing in Vicky was to regain her title, and it's been 2 years now?
I just feel like I don't know what Nyla is, and I want Nyla to have a chance to show me what she is. She's done a lot of the promos, and it's but I agree with you. I think it's time for Vicky to step aside. Maybe they have a mini storyline between the two of them where they break up, and that because she's just holding her back, and Vicky this whole time to get all these things, but she didn't get it, and it hasn't happened now, and
it's not paid off. And they easily could. Or they could just go the FTR route and they're like, you're fired. Like they did with Tully. They're like, we don't even need a storyline, just get out. It's like that's almost what needs to happen here. It's just there's no point. But they could make a storyline, be like, the whole reason I brought you in was to make me champion. There's been 3 champions since then. I didn't even get the TBS championship. Like I don't have anything to show for it. We need to, put her through a table like she does and then just because even I don't know if people have seen it on Twitter, but Buff Bagwell was actually tweeting about Nyla last night, and he was like, she's so powerful, like why isn't she champion? And I was like, because I think he's new to AEW, so I don't know that I don't think he knew at the time that she has previously been champion before. But so I was like, even somebody like Buff Bagwell is like, why? Like she should be in the title picture. So maybe I just think so. Nyla, we could see, I would like to see obviously other women involved in, and as somebody else brought this up too, that Nyla was the one, she did the same thing to Britt Baker. When Britt won, she attacked her. And so I was like, well, maybe because Riho is not around. So Nyla's Nyla's the welcoming committee.
Or maybe they're going to bring one of these new gals in, like Athena or something, and make them have a real
they seem
part in the storyline or something.
Right. And so it seems like they were building Athena versus Jade because they've been going back and forth on Twitter, which Athena could just be like, she could come in and maybe she loses the Jade and then sets her sights on Thunder Rosa or something, or who knows. So yeah, I'm hoping maybe one of these women they bring in, or maybe we get some DDT. Maybe we bring back Maki Ito. And Maki Ito and Thunder Rosa have a history together. From what I understand, they wrestled in Japan, and I've seen that referenced a few times. I saw it referenced when Maki first was in AEW, and then when she won last week, somebody brought it up again, and it was Thunder Rosa in the ring with Maki and was talking to her, and I can't remember what she said, and Maki said, She said, I don't understand what you're saying. She just was like pretending that she didn't know that Thunder Rosa just said all these things. She said, I don't know. And so apparently they had a good feud or something like that, or they've had a few matches. So I would like to see, with the DDT stuff they're bringing in, I would like to see Maki get a title shot, or even if she's not to get a title shot, just a match with Thunder Rosa would be cool. So I hope they can recover from. That's not a good way to set the tone for your brand new champion, and so I hope they recover that quickly and move on from it and get her some real good competition. And I don't know, since she's the champion, she probably won't be involved with the Owen women's tournament, so maybe she ends up facing the winner of that, as at some point, or who knows. But I hope that this is not a foreshadowing of things to come for this title reign, because that was a way to start it.
Yeah, it was not good. And hopefully, I'm going to sit back and say maybe there's something to this, and this is building something else, but it was not pretty. It didn't make me feel good.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, so that last hour kind of just went off the rails.
Yeah, it really did. It was such a really good show, and then it kind of was like,
because then they had the Dan Lambert stuff after that, and it was just all of it. It just seems like everything just kept, like, once it got off the rails, it just kind of kept going off the rails. And then the main event ended up being decent, I think, and then so it kind of saved it. But it was just a really weird show. It was almost like two completely different shows, because
it really was.
First hour, like the first 80 minutes or so, was just. It was so much fun. It was action packed. There was a lot going on, a lot of good wrestling. And then it just, like, as soon as they got on the microphone, it just turned into something completely different. It was really weird. But it definitely was like two different episodes.
For real.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see where that goes from there.
All right, so we are going to talk about some other stuff. So I have not listened to it yet. I did hear one clip, but so we're going to start with, so Mel has been keeping up with some things that I have not kept up with. And so one of them is Dax Harwood, who was on, it's now called The Sessions, correct?
I believe it's The Sessions.
I think it's just now The Sessions, which is Renee's show.
Renee Paquette's. It's a YouTube video show. I know that there isn't, or I believe there's an audio version of it. But also
it is on YouTube. And so there was a clip going around from that show, which I did hear. It was the story of Dax talking about how he shared some his mental health situation with Shawn Michaels. He thought they bonded, and then literally as soon as he got in front of the clique, Shawn was just saying really terrible things and making fun of him for it, which does not leave a good taste in most people's mouth. And so it sounds like, outside of that, I heard that this was a very, very good interview. It was really eye-opening. It was something that, we're kind of seeing some more of, where more men in general, especially men in wrestling, are being more open about their mental health struggles, which I think is a huge thing. And so, like, we saw when Eddie Kingston wrote the Players Tribune article, like the feedback that he got from that. So I think it's really important that, we're having these conversations. So why don't you tell us, what was covered and, what stood out to you from this interview?
So what was really cool is, Renee has a great way with people. I love that woman so much. She's amazing. It kind of started out, they were talking, and his wife was wandering around in the back, and Renee was like, get her on here. And I think, and I'll talk about this when we talk about the other sort of section of this, is that I think these things started out as very normal conversations, and these are good hosts who, especially Renee, who understood that this was something that was going on, and she knew exactly what to do, when to do it, and allowed him. I don't think Dax Harwood went into this interview thinking that he was going to talk about body dysmorphia issues that he had and anxiety issues, just all of these things that were essentially holding him back as a human. And because of a culture from where he's from, and I think in general with men, I mean, you know, suicide is the like number 1 or number 2 cause of death amongst men. And because, and that a lot of what that stems from is what he's talking about very much. Because when I was listening to it, I was like, well, that's because you're not allowed to talk about it because you're a man.
Yeah.
And he talked about because he grew up in the South additionally. And so I think he's from somewhere in your area.
He's from Asheville, which is about 3 hours from here.
It's he's at least regionally.
Yeah. And so I definitely get that.
Adjacent to you.
Right.
So I definitely understand down there, and I understand very much. I had relatives from same region, and it was very much and this is kind of universal, but especially is men are men and they don't talk about their feelings and they don't do all these things. And his internalizing that started to create, I mean, that sort of thing, that was what led to, I mean, you don't think of men having body issues, but it's like, but you should, because we talk about men's bodies as much as we talk about women's bodies.
Especially in wrestling.
In a business like his, especially where there's a very, I mean, especially you look at WWE where there is just like, this is legitimately what you need to look like. This is your cookie cutter that you need to have. So,
and there's the joke of Vince's like, this is the guy, the Vince's like perfect body. And just to kind of touch on the body dysmorphia thing, Alex Shelley has tweeted a lot recently about his own body dysmorphia. Anthony Henry has had conversation. They were having a conversation on Twitter. They were kind of going to try to hold each other accountable just with what they were dealing with. And so Anthony Henry also has been open about his body dysmorphia. And so I was thinking about it, just like reading. And so I was reading through the replies of other men who are in independent wrestling. And some of them even weren't wrestlers, but they were like, and so I was thinking about it. I was like, well, WWE has been on everybody's TVs for decades. And so we obviously think about, okay, well, divas have to look a certain way. You know, most people didn't look like Chyna or Nicole Bass. They all had this very certain thing that they looked like. But then I was thinking about it and I was like, well, look at the way men were portrayed to young boys and teenagers. And I was like, and I never really thought of it that way, that they were being subjected to the same thing I was being subjected to watching women, that these young boys and teenagers are being subjected to the same thing about having this ideal body type that Vince McMahon likes. Because he's trying to sell tickets to a show, and we're not, and because men are kind of left out of that conversation, like we talk about how women are, inundated with media and with magazines and models and things like that, that we don't really think about how men are inundated with athletes and things like that they grow up watching, and then it affects them. And then when you get to and then when independent wrestlers are trying to get on TV and they're trying to make it to WWE, and then you have wrestlers who are in WWE and they're trying to maintain. So I think this is a really, really important conversation that's starting to to happen.
And the braver portion to me is like, this is something that, like, it's easier for women to talk about it today, this minute, at this very moment. And again, I've been alive for 4 decades, so it hasn't always been that way.
But it's absolutely
far, far easier for me to seek help from a therapist or a behaviorist or something than it is for my husband to do so. And that's from inside and outside. And he made that point quite a bit, and his wife had to help him to just get to the point of being able to say that it's gotten to a point where I need to go get help that isn't my wife, and that isn't a guy that I'm working with in the ring, and that isn't, and that's really hard. That's the really hard. It's like, you got to be tough and you got to be these things. It's like, no, it takes so much more. That's harder. That I would much rather take a bump than admit that I have a problem that needs to be tackled on the level that something like this has to.
And then you even see, like, you see somebody like him who, appears to be in shape. Well, and even with like Alex Shelley, who's extremely in shape.
Great to us.
And people were like trying to be like, oh, you look great. But I'm like, it's a mental thing. Like, people have to understand that, like, it doesn't just you complimenting them and telling them their body looks great is not and like that doesn't, it's not even really that helpful, because it is a mental thing that is so ingrained into how they view themselves and how they go about their daily lives, that like they have to basically, just like with we've talked about with women, we have to undo all these years of
stigma.
And you have to undo all these years of what you've learned. Like, you're supposed to look like this, you're supposed to do that, this is the ideal woman, like you aren't gonna find a husband if you don't look like this, or you're you're not valued as much. And so the same thing with men, like it's a completely, like you have to basically deprogram yourself from what pop culture and the media and even people around you, because they're under the same thing too. Like that they've been taught that. And so then they make comments, and then you see like obviously people on the internet who are trolls and they comment on people's bodies. And so, because it's also how they've been programmed to think, like they've been programmed to think that, a male wrestler should look like this, like he should have no body fat, just like, a woman should look like this. And so it's a lot of just the mental, it's got to be exhausting, and I can only imagine how difficult that is.
The thing that I think I take away from a lot of these situations where they talk about it is that they love their profession, they love the work that they do, and this takes away from doing your job effectively, and to like have to be torn between, this is the thing I love and want to do for my career, and these are the toxic things that go in there, and how do I rectify those two things? And having those conversations. And as a woman who is married to a man, who it's like, how do you get your husband, if you're someone who does want your husband to open up about things like this, and who does want, AEW has a unique opportunity here, because they have a bunch of gentlemen on their staff, on their roster, in their ring, who are attacking really serious issues of mental health, addiction, body dysmorphia. Jon Moxley threw away everything in the middle of a season to go get help with something that he knew he needed. And an addiction is mental illness also, like, despite what people where they want to put dirty junkiness, but the idea is that and that's so for you to be able, like, for me, I can turn around to my husband and go, you may think you're tough, let me tell you about these two guys over here who talked about their body dysmorphia and went into addiction recovery. And so they're looking for ways to appeal more. And I'm not saying shamelessly use their pain. No, I'm saying
use it in an authentic
way.
They
are using their experiences on these podcasts, in these video shows, in the ring. Jon Moxley's been just wide open about it, open book about it. Why lie?
Right.
They're doing stuff with the Heart Association, and they're doing stuff with all these other associations. And I think it's important to continue, because, and even if it's just into the community, which, as we bring more people up, continue to use those spaces to do that, because him doing that is allowing younger wrestlers like someone like Gabe Kidd, who has been able to come forward. And is that before, when you did that, before this era, you did that blackball. Fine. You're too weak. You're too stupid. You're too whatever. Fill in the blanks.
You're not mentally strong enough to be here. You can't.
Which is honestly quite the opposite. Definitely think about the level of strength it takes to put yourself out there to be treated for anything like that.
And when you were saying this, it reminded me, I don't know if you have heard the comments, but Triple H was on Stephen A. Smith on Friday, and he was talking about his health. And so I watched it and covered it for the other site. And it reminded me when you said this, because Triple H is now, they were asking what he's doing now that he's no longer going to be in ring. And he's like, I'm doing recruiting and development. The Stephen A. Smith made the point, like, that he, like, his favorite characters growing up were people like Ultimate Warrior, all these larger than life characters. And then Triple H said that basically that's what they're looking for. And he said, because nobody pays to see the guy next door. And so that just goes back to that WWE mindset. When you said that, it just clicked. Because I even thought about it last night. I thought about it a few times when I was watching, like, the people I paid to see last night, with the exception of Effie. Most of them, they don't have larger than life characters. They're people that I've a lot of them I have talked to after shows because they're just regular people. They are like my neighbors. They are somebody that some of them would be people that I would like to I would hang out with just because they're they're cool people. I love what they do in the ring. And so it's just when you said that, it just reminded me of that quote. And I was like, see, that's just planting that seed of you have to be this way. You have to be this larger than life character. You can't let people see your weakness. You can't, you have to look like what Vince likes. You have to. And so it's still in 2022, they're perpetuating these myths and these ideas, which is extremely harmful. And then you have people in AEW and New Japan Strong and independent wrestling that are talking about these very real things, and then you have WWE who is still promoting these. So it's just the dichotomy of it, that people are finally speaking up and saying, this is not okay. This is harmful to talent. It's harmful to their employees. It's harmful to their fans. It's harmful to society. And I've talked to Scarlett Harris, who is the author, and she wrote a book about the women's history within WWE, and we talked about it, and she was like, and she's brought it up a few times, she was like, wrestling is like a mirror for society. A lot of the things that happen in wrestling are things that are happening in society. And so then that's what we now we're starting to have these conversations, and so it should be reaching wrestling, and it should be a point where, like you said, it's not something they've made into a storyline where they're gonna it's not like Jeff Hardy's addiction that they've turned into a storyline with Sheamus. It's not. Yeah, and it's
or Roman Reigns leukemia or any of those other storylines that they just are the worst about.
Right, exactly. So there's a different way of handling it, and like you said, you have Jon Moxley who comes back, he hasn't shied away from it, and then you have Bubba Ray saying that he needs to apologize for missing time, which is absurd.
I'm so glad. I actually was very, very proud of wrestling Twitter for the most part. That got almost no traction, and it got traction with people telling what a dick.
Yeah, well, and GCW ran their really big show that weekend. It was their pay-per-view show, and they started because Mox came out. Mox had a match, and they were chanting F Bully Ray the entire time, and it was very loud. It was very clear what they were saying. They sent the message, and of course he played it off the next day, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not even on that show, and I'm getting heat."
Yes, so but that's, I think, and that lends itself to the larger point that we're making here, is that it's become okay enough that you got booed down for being a jerk.
Yeah, for something like that. And no, you were not involved, but the person that is there, we're letting him know. First, we're letting you know that that's not okay, but we're letting John know that we support him, and we think it's wonderful that he's doing what he's doing to be healthy and to be, because clearly outside of wrestling, he is a father, he is a husband, he is a son, he's all of these things outside of wrestling that he needs to be able to show up for and take care of himself. And so I don't think there's any, and then it just shows, against toxic men. It's almost, I hate, using that phrase, but that's almost like the most manly thing that you can do, is to take action for your issues and do something about it. And that he's able to do something about it. And that promo probably inspired many more people. If it even helped one person go get into therapy or go get help, or at least Google, okay, I'm drinking too much, what do I do? Or I'm doing this too much, what do I do? Or if he even got somebody to make that first step, even if they haven't been able to follow through on it, or, for whatever reason, that's huge in itself. And so Jon Moxley is doing more for society than he even realizes, I think. And that's a lot to carry. And I don't think that should be put on him, but I just think that his story, and I think that's probably why he was so, not only is he holding himself accountable, but he is helping other people know, okay, I'm this tough badass, and I went and got help. You can do it too. If you or someone you love, if they are struggling, you can, there's help out there, and there's ways to get around this, and you don't have to deal with this. You can.
Well, they don't all look like the hippy dippy guys that are on the, I mean, it is what it is, but I think that your men are men because we can't talk about anything, and then you show them a manly man talking about something, and I think it has the same counterbalancing effect of yes, indeed, actually. And I think that the reflection of life thing is perfect, because I believe that it's really sad to hear Triple H saying that. I didn't watch the entire thing, I saw clips of it. It's really sad to hear that in a week where we lost Scott Hall to something that ultimately is an overall overview. The overview of that is it does have something to do with that lifestyle, and the steroids and the way that things have been treated and the whole thing from a guy who has a defibrillator now in his heart who can't go back in.
Right.
That's you just said it. You said a little while ago. That's how ingrained it is. It's written into, it's institutionalized into us to that point. And that's even a guy who's suffered a near death illness situation is still can't break himself of the habit of doing that. And
we even brought up, and a lot of, like, he talked about it, and a lot of it is genetic, but there were things that Triple H was probably doing in his career that contributed to it, and also contributed
we all know what was was on.
Yeah, and it's obvious, and I'm not trying, I'm not shaming him or anything like that, but we know that had to contribute to along with the, he has the genetic problems he talked about. It's 3 generations on his father's side, is what he said. Like, his dad had a triple bypass, I think he said, at 62. His grandfather died suddenly at 70 of heart disease, and then his great grandfather was also had it. So clearly, yes, obviously it's genetic, but then you are doing things to your body that push that along. And like you said, it goes back to some of the things that Scott Hall was dealing with, was because of all of the, the extracurricular things that he was doing to his body at the time. And then it, you can even say that, for Eddie Guerrero, for a lot of these people, they were doing things to their body, and they eventually, got clean. Some of them got clean and got help, but then, the damage was already done. And so these are things that, we want these people to be around for a long time. And so, you have Buff Bagwell, who like 2 weeks ago, he moved in with DDP, and he is now doing the same thing that Jake Roberts and Scott Hall did. He is trying to get help. He's trying to get cleaned up. And so now, and he's tweeting a lot yesterday, different internet things that he's learning, and he's learning internet terms and things like that. But somebody asked, he was like, well, is this really him, or is this his people trying to rehabilitate his image? And he said, no, it is me now, because he was like, it's part of my recovery, is that I have to take responsibility and I have to interact with people. And I was like, so I think that's, and so we are, so in the same week that, Triple H is saying these things, we have people like Buff Bagwell who are actively seeking help. We have Gabe Kidd, who I will go ahead and put a trigger warning here, and we will put it down in the, we'll try to put it down in a timestamp down in the comments, just because we obviously don't want to trigger anybody or upset them, but it is a conversation that I think that needs to be had. So in this conversation, so over the last couple of months, Gabe Kidd has been open about his mental health struggles. And he came on Twitter a few days ago and said that he tried to take his own life twice. And then once he was in the hospital, he tried to take his life again. And he detailed, not super detailed, but he did detail how he attempted to do that. So he's dealing with very real things that people, I think, it is kind of, I guess, shocking to read, but I think in some cases people need to know what is really happening. It's not, it's very hard what these people are dealing with. And so it's very, he was saying that in his struggles that he was having, because he was trying to end his life, he gave away all of his money. And now he said he gets paid at the end of the month, but he was struggling to buy groceries and to buy food and things like that. And so he's just showing the very real things, basically almost in real time, the things that he's dealing with. And and he was saying that he was also diagnosed with, I believe, bipolar.
Yeah, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a medical professional.
He said he's been diagnosed. He said he's been diagnosed twice, once in England and once in LA. So
because those are the things that, as someone who is, exists in the mental health community for quite some time in my life, and has had, not just family members, but friends who have dealt with the different shades of bipolar and what a horrible disease that can do, and learning to cope with it. And self-harm, unfortunately, is a very common outlet for things like that. And I guess if he's talking on the internet and he's talking out there, and let's hope that some of these people that we're talking about today are the reason that he's talking on the internet.
I hope so.
And not part of the community anymore, something that gets so toxic. And we've seen that happen, unfortunately, and that's too bad. I am glad that he's reaching out, and I'm now glad that there are men and women in the business that aren't gonna be like, oh, look at that weak jerk. This is exactly the kind of reason it's nice that the new reflections are being made.
Right. And he even, Gabe said, I think it was like a day or two later, he tweeted Tony Khan and said, when I get my mental health sorted, I want to have a conversation with you to protect Nick Wayne. Like, I don't know that people are, I don't know.
He's so young.
He's 16 years old. And, you know, Gabe has been wrestling. Gabe is, I think he's 24 or 25, and he's been wrestling for like 10 years. So he, you know, and so I don't know if, because a lot of trolls have gone after Gabe Kidd. He's interacted, which is probably not the best thing, which, you know, he's done, you know, so there's been a lot of really nasty things said to Gabe. And which is not a surprise because it's Twitter. And so I don't know if these things are also happening to Nick Wayne, and maybe that's why he specifically said him, or if it's just because of the age or whatever it is. For whatever reason, he specifically mentioned Nick Wayne, but I think, you know, he could probably help so many people in general, but he's taking that step and reaching out to the owner of a major company and be like, when I get this sorted, like, this is something you need to do too, to make sure that your wrestlers are, you know, they have somewhere to go, they have access to what they need, or, you know, people need to look out for the signs, or, you know, it's a conversation that needs to keep happening, keep progressing. And so it was good to see that even in the midst of all of his struggles, he is still trying to help somebody else, which, you know, is basically the point of all of this, of speaking up and being open, is not only helping yourself, but helping others. And we've talked about the wrestling community and how sometimes it can be a really nasty place, and sometimes it can be a wonderful, wonderful place, and it could be, you know, very helpful. So it's nice to see that, you know, even in the midst of his struggles, he's trying, you know, as well. And then I'll also circle back to, so we were talking about Dax and Gabe, but then we've also had William Regal, who has been opening up about some of the health issues he had several years ago. That I have not listened to the interview that he did with
several years ago. Indeed. Yeah. Apparently he traced it back to the mid to late 90s, where he took a German suplex or something to that effect, took a something bump, an overhead from Ricky Steamboat.
Oh gosh.
And he heard it pop, is what he said. But this is and you were the thing about Wheeler Yuta, where he said it hurt, and I bet I had a friend explaining to me recently that Regal is actually one of the last Carney wrestlers.
Yeah,
which, I mean, I don't even think a lot of people necessarily understand that the origins of wrestlers was that they'd have a ringer in there and a really strong dude, and they'd have the ringer beat the crap out of the strong dude, and then be like, you guys want to try, pay me money. Yeah. And then the strong dude would lay you out. I mean, that's like wrestling. That's like the very basic overview.
But but that's where that's where the Carney term comes from, because it was happening.
What he started out doing. And it was, I was like, how old is he? I couldn't believe. My friend was like, yeah, this was still going on in Blackpool in the 80s. And I'm like, golly, there's some really fun things still going on in the world.
Yeah. Well, so the reason I say a few years ago is because the section that I saw about it was from the health issues he was having in 2018. I didn't know what led up to. I mean, I knew it was some things, but I know specifically in 2018, because people thought, when originally, before the interview aired, people thought that it was a current thing that he was dealing with. But it actually, that part of the conversation, I believe, was in 2018. But even just from what I read from 2018, it's a miracle that this man is still he is slapping Wheeler Yuta like that, because it is a miracle that this man is still alive.
It's amazing. And I think it's really fascinating, especially someone who's had neurologists myself, when he was talking about his neurological health and the things where they were like looking at his images and they were like, what, how are you still walking and don't even sneeze and all these things. And the thing is that he's had, this is multiple diseases. Like, he has an underlying health condition. He has pericarditis, which is having the fluid around your heart sac is inflamed. And so you have to deal with that for your whole life. And so it was like, all right, cool. I have this thing I've had to deal with my whole life. And the thing that really, the craziest thing, I'm sure a lot of people have mentioned this, is that he kept doing neck bridges for years after this. It's probably why he was still walking.
Yeah.
I mean, strong neck. Like, make sure, ladies and gentlemen, strengthen your neck.
Oh yeah.
I've never wanted my neck health to be better after a couple weeks. Recently, I was like, can I do bridges? Is that cool? But so he had the one thing and the other thing, but he kept doing, and it's like, and I get this as someone who, and I mean, I don't even take bumps in the ring. This is just playing soccer for all my life, basically, was you play with aches and pains, you go, especially in a wrestling ring, of course you're gonna play hurt all the time.
Because the show must go on.
You saw that it hurt. Yeah. And they all do. They all feel like that. And if they were pulling punches, we'd all know it. And it's so he kind of kept doing the thing, and he kept really, thinking, well, it's just my this is this and my that is that, and I have the pericarditis and I have these things. Well, but it ended up that he had actually broken, I think, 4 different vertebrae in his spine.
Oh my gosh.
He was just walking around. He had to take an 8-hour flight sitting straight up so that his cerebral spinal fluid wasn't going, because like your cerebral spinal fluid lives in there and keeps your nerves from smashing into your spine and being excruciating.
Right.
And he had to sit up for 8. I mean, he's telling this story, and Jericho is Jericho, and I'm not going to listen to every Talk is Jericho episode ever. I like to listen to the ones I like to listen to.
Sure.
And, and I pick and choose my Jericho episodes, but I give him all the credit in the world for this one, because it's like, he knew what was happening. He realized that there was something bigger going on, and he shut up and only asked questions enough to be like, no, please keep saying that. Or, I was with you that whole time and I didn't even know that. Or because of what was happening to him, he would go to sleep, and because he would fall asleep funny, it would wake him up. And he was basically, because his nerves were so bad and his body had completely recompensated for what was going on, is that anytime his body relaxed, his nerves were smashing into the walls of his right. So it was keeping him awake. He just thought I was an insomniac. And because Chris Jericho was like, yeah, you used to 3 a.m. you'd be pacing the plane, the aisle on the plane and all these things. And then at one part, they finally just had, at one point, he had such a bad deal where it was like a goose egg around his heart.
Oh my gosh.
They literally he's like, I'll show you the images sometime. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go right out there and say that I would love to see those images.
Right. William Regal,
they actually had to peel a casing of calcified stuff off the outside of his heart. It was squeezing his heart. I mean, he shouldn't be alive 8 times over.
Right.
I'm wearing my Jim Valley effing King of Recovery shirt here right now.
Right.
I think that Lord Regal is either co-king or started the thing and before we knew it, or I don't know. They might have to rule together in this one.
Yeah.
And I don't think that, because he kept saying, you know me, I'm not going to talk about this stuff, and I'm not going to put this stuff out there, and I don't want and I get this a lot too, I don't want a pity party. I don't want people to treat me differently,
right, because
I have a heart problem or my back hurts, which turns out it's not your back hurting.
No,
but it felt to me like the first time he'd had sort of a, I'm going to talk about all of these things.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad it was not just in the setting it was in, but that all of us in the wrestling community who are big, I'm a huge Regal fan. He was one of my first, him and Triple H, actually, this is so interesting, were the 2 heels where I went, I hate those guys. And then I was in. That was where you knew you were hooked.
Right.
It was those were the guys. And so, and just his just continuing to just sort of be whatever about it. And I'm like,
a very William Regal.
What else are you going to do? But also, thank you for sharing this story and letting us know, because it's what you don't realize is that your chronic illness story here is going to help a lot of people too.
Yeah. Absolutely, because people don't, that is definitely another section that of, the population that don't get enough, I don't want to say attention, but it's something that's not talked about enough just in general as a society. And so to have somebody like William Regal, of all people, to be like, hey, I have struggled with this for decades. You know, I shouldn't be here. Chronic illness is something that, and chronic pain is something that, you know, a lot of people deal with even in just this country, and that, you know, worldwide, that's something, and it's still not discussed. It's not necessarily a taboo topic. It's just, I don't think people know.
It's hard for people because I think in a lot of cases, especially, it's hard to get proper medical care.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. I mean, he made the point over and over, and to their credit, that WWE not being involved in his life and not being able to get him some of these treatments that were very experimental, that were said, you know, only 2 doctors do this surgery. Yeah. I mean, and he made sure to acknowledge that all the time, is that there was never any question, and there was never any, you know, we can say what we want to say, but they never balked at a bill. They never stopped for driving me. You know, if they needed to fly me to the only guy that did this surgery in Atlanta, then they flew me there, and there were no, you know, and wonderful. That's good, because that's the way that should be. And that's what I would hope to hear. Mm-hmm. And
absolutely,
you can play politics all you want, but
right. Did he touch on anything? Because, you know, when the very first time we heard him speak in AEW was the very emotional moment he had with Tony Schiavone, where he talked about, you know, 29 years ago, you saved my life. So did he touch on that at all?
I think that was because he, like, there was I think that was on, did he drive him to a doctor or made him go to a doctor? But he saw that he was right there when his legs gave out on him or something.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, he almost fell off an escalator at one point.
Wow.
While it was moving. There were a couple of times, and I think that Tony was one of the people that was like, you need to go to a doctor right now. Like, I'm going to take you to a doctor. And I think it was one of the times that, because he had all these periodic incidents over the years where it was like passing out or getting weirdly dizzy or thinking I have vertigo, when in fact I don't have vertigo quite at all. Like, my spine is sitting on things. It's,
my goodness.
I really encourage people, and I mean, we're talking about them right now, but I genuinely encourage people to go listen to these men tell their stories for themselves.
Yeah,
because they are so much more fleshed out and so much more meaningful coming from the horse's mouth as it was.
Yeah. Well, and I think to hear, and like you said, to hear these men who are seen a certain way, to hear these tough men, these strong men, these people, like, especially like William Regal, who has had, you know, was like a bare knuckle brawler, and, you know, he was to hear these stories coming directly from them, I can only imagine how impactful and how powerful that is. But I'm glad to see that, you know, we are having these conversations and we're having these stories, and that they feel safe enough to have these, you know, to bring these to the public, where it's not just conversations they're having with their family members or their friends. And, you know, in some cases they're not even, some people don't even talk to their closest, you know, relatives and friends about the things that they're dealing with, because they don't want to be a burden, or they don't want to, like you said, they don't want a pity party, or maybe they don't even necessarily know what's going on, so they don't know how to talk about it. So to go on public platforms that anybody can listen to and say, you know, and tell their stories is incredibly huge. And I don't think that we even fully understand the scope of what these conversations are going to mean. And it's just the very, very tip of the iceberg. But I'm glad to see that, you know, these are conversations that are happening, and that people are willing to not only talk about it, but they're willing to listen, and willing to, you know, and like you said, they're helping so many people just by even talking about it. And I think I really hope that this is not a trend, I don't want to say, but you know, is something that I hope keeps happening with them, because they're very important things. And that's why we wanted to talk about them, because we keep seeing them. They're important. Some of these things we can relate to in different ways. And so that, you know, that we're even personally affected by it, or like we talked about, it's almost like with cancer, like, even if you don't have it, or not an immediate family member, but you know somebody, or you know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, like, it's got to that point. So even if you don't necessarily know somebody with a chronic illness, then there's somebody that you know who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows, like, it's just and so it's a thing that, you know, that should be discussed, and they shouldn't be, you know, it's not necessarily taboo or anything, but there are conversations that we should be having. And so it's really nice to see that they're happening on such a big platform as well.
And for people that are struggling with any one of these things, it makes you feel way less alone.
Absolutely.
Because that's somebody that is somebody from somewhere. And I mean, as a wrestling fan, when I get to hear other wrestlers talk about things that make you just a little, it's like, okay, I mean, we're all human. You said it.
Yep.
We all have to go home at night, and we have our things and the things we love and the things we want to do and the futures that we have planned for us. And and I think, since we're talking about this, we are going to kind of wrap it up with a very personal kind of version of this. And Sam and I agree that we definitely want to put this in there because we're having this conversation today.
Yeah.
And it is important.
Yeah. So the timing of this last weekend, well, apparently it happened last Saturday, but it didn't come out until the following day. So I was getting ready to, or I was starting to record last week's episode when apparently my sister saw something on Twitter, and she waited to tell me because she didn't want to upset me during the recording. But a Twitter friend of mine, Robbie, I've known him on Twitter probably 10 years. I met him through Braves Twitter. And then it turns out he's a wrestling fan as well. And so we used to have conversations about stuff like that. And he had a lot of health issues. He had leukemia before. He had a heart transplant last fall, and was getting some help. And one of the things that helped him during all of this was he was watching wrestling a lot. I think that's when he got into AEW. So we had conversations about that. But last Saturday, at the age of 39, he passed away. And one of the last things he tweeted was on Wednesday, he tweeted about Thunder Rosa's win, and he was happy about that. And then I think his very last tweet was about the Braves, so very on brand for Robbie. But I just wanted to mention that, just let if any of his friends or family happen to see this somehow, I wanted to let you know that I was thinking of him and just wanted to give him, just talk about his story a little bit. I mean, we weren't super close, but we did have these conversations, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who are dealing with things like this, and so it does. These stories do affect everyday people. They affect you, even on somebody that you met on Twitter that you don't really know in real life. You know these things about them, and so it was they I know that a Braves fan who was really good friends with him, she set up a GoFundMe page, and originally it was for the Braves have these bricks outside of their stadium where you can have them engraved with whatever. So they wanted to raise money to do a memorial brick for him, and apparently quickly surpassed that goal. And so now they are using that same GoFundMe page to raise funds to help his parents with funeral costs, because although he was having health problems, his death was unexpected. They were not prepared for these funeral costs. And so there is a GoFundMe page for him. Everything will go to his parents to help take care of that. I will make sure I tweet the GoFundMe page from the Powerbombshells. Even if you can't donate, that's perfectly fine. But if you can retweet it and share the word, then maybe there's somebody who can donate $1. I mean, literally every dollar will help somebody else. And so since he was in the wrestling community, we wanted to use our platform to amplify that and to get his story out there, and to also, because we've talked about it before, and we won't get into a whole lot of things, but the healthcare system in this country is not great. It's shameful. It shouldn't, people shouldn't have to have GoFundMe, because a friend of ours set up a GoFundMe for when he was recovering from his transplant. He was, not able to work, obviously. So I had a GoFundMe to help him, cover some bills and things like that. And so, it's sad that, people have to have GoFundMes just to pay their bills. They have to have GoFundMes to deal with anything health related, to pay for funerals and things like that. So, any way that we can help, I definitely just want to get the word out there. And so like I said, if you can't donate, that's perfectly fine. But if you want to retweet it and get the word out, maybe somebody somewhere can help out. But we just want to get Robbie's story out there, and get a wrestling fan, and hopefully get him, the proper burial that he deserves, and to help his, like you said, help his family out. They're still here and having to deal with all of this, with his death, and then now having to deal with this stuff on top of it. So any way that we can kind of assist in that, I would love to help them out.
Agreed. And I wanted to make sure we got that in, and we will definitely get that on our tweeters and all that jazz.
Yes.
I think let's throw that graphic up one more time as we're getting ready to wrap up here, because we want to make sure that you tune in to our, look at me, I'm like trying to get to the thingy. We would like you to tune in to our Fight Game Media WrestleMania coverage. Sorry, I had to do that. But
like
we are going to be live for the first time ever next Sunday, the 3rd of April. The 3rd
at 1
o'clock. The last day of WrestleMania. Maybe the day Cody's showing up. Maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't care.
We'll see.
Maybe we'll get to talk about it.
Maybe. And while you're waiting for WrestleMania to start, you can come hang out with us. And
that was my thought. I was like, pre-game, come hang out with us. There's some other shows on, but we can talk about them. And
there's a lot of good wrestling that weekend, and they all deserve coverage and attention. And there's some really good talent out there with some really good shows that'll be happening that weekend. So even if it's not your thing and that you may not check it out, maybe just hear about what some cool people are doing and come chat with us and definitely interact with us. We'll pop your comments up and
Sam will not read them unless I go, read it.
Or I'm over here in the comments and I'll have Sam read it. So definitely come join us and interact with us. It should be fun. We've done some spaces, but this will be our first live YouTube show, so that should be just tune in for that, because there's no telling what will happen. Probably barking dogs and meowing cats and
who knows?
knocking things over, maybe. Just who knows?
Cody Rhodes is going to show up on our feed and everyone's going to be mad.
Yeah,
exactly. The one place you weren't watching. That'll teach you.
Yes.
Anyway. I'm really excited about it because I actually like doing live streams. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah, this will be the first. I did the Brews News, which was my first live YouTube thing. So this will be completely different because we're hosting and talking, and you're gonna hopefully come talk to us. Then don't leave us hanging. Come chat with us. Don't leave us in here two broads talking, which I didn't say at the beginning of this, but
that's okay.
two broads talking.
Come join us for our broadcast. And I'm going to make that joke 100 billion times. You better get used to it. It's going to be made a lot.
One day when we get famous enough to have shirts, we're going to have
the broadcast.
Yes.
There you go. I'm going to put the thing up there one more time because it's so sexy and Garrett works so hard on it.
It is. And there's
our
a lot.
thing is in front of it.
Oh,
okay, no. I'm putting it back down. All right.
Yeah, but it's starting today, as you see. So if you're on Fight Game Media's Patreon, you'll already get access to some stuff. So there's stuff going on. Make sure you keep an eye on that schedule and we'll keep posting it on our Twitter too.
Plus, there's giveaways. There's actually giveaways that can get you stuff for double or nothing, which and we'll probably have another party that weekend too.
Yeah, if I could enter it, I would.
We're not allowed. Friends and family of Fight Game Media are not allowed.
But you are allowed to come chat with us. So please do.
Right.
Don't leave us here hanging by ourselves next week. I mean, we do like talking to ourselves or to each other about wrestling. So we will have that conversation, but we would like you to come join us and come chat with us in the comment box in real time and just come talk about wrestling with us because we like talking about wrestling. And like I said, we're going to be covering things that are, so even if you don't like WWE and you don't care about WrestleMania, guess what? You
don't have to.
We'll mention it probably, but we're watching a lot of cool stuff that weekend, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about what we think you should be watching, and people who are having bangers and who are doing cool things, and all the cutters. And I'm sure Jordan Oliver is going to do a cutter sometime next weekend, and we've got Effie versus Minoru Suzuki is happening. And then there's like Joey Janela's Spring Break Clusterfuck has Jimmy Wang Yang in it. His daughter is in it. There's all kinds of just insane things. There's Effie's Big Gay Brunch. There's For the Culture, which is going to have Shane Taylor promotion, and it's going to have Swole versus Tasha Still for Tasha's Impact title. Like there's Ring of Honor, there's Impact. There's just about basically you should find something you like next weekend. Agreed. And even if you're not watching it, we're going to talk to you about it. Maybe you can catch them next time or find them somewhere. And we love gifts, so send us gifts of cool things you saw over the weekend. So
all right, we're going to get out of here then. Yeah. All right, you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, live.
Bye.